back to my channel. Welcome back to another video. Today's Vlogmas video is going to be following me along as I attempt to make a Yule log. This will be my first time I'm making this. First, let me preface this video with, if you are clicking on this because you don't know who I am and you just it showed up in your feed and you're hoping that this is going to be a beautiful step-by-step tutorial on how to make an easy, perfect Yule log, I'm not sure this is going to be the video for you. It could be. I have not made the Yule log yet. This is something I've wanted to do for a long time. But let me first talk about why I'm not 100% that this is going to be a 100% win. One, I feel like there's 4 different types of people in the kitchen. We have those that don't cook at all, who cannot cook. They try to follow recipes or they have no desire to cook. They just do not like to do it, so they choose not to. Then we have those people that can cook, follow a recipe, not follow a recipe, and just like me. So I feel like I'm very good in the kitchen. I can actually usually just look at a picture of a recipe or just kind of breeze and, kind of skim over ingredients list and just look at a recipe blog. And I feel like I can usually create that without even looking at the recipe. I am usually pretty good about coming up with my own recipes. So I'm not afraid in the kitchen. I feel like I could cook anything. Then there's those that are bakers who can take any baking type recipe, cakes, muffins, cookies, pies, whatever they may be, and they can turn out these beautiful, beautiful creations. Decorating, usually those same people are excellent decorators. That is not me. I don't know why, but I have always struggled in the kitchen when it's come to baking. One, I know with cookies, I'm not super patient. So it's hard for me to have to do all these, and it's the same, actually it's probably with everything part of baking, because you do these ingredients in this bowl. You do these ingredients in this bowl. Then you have to do, you slowly put this into this bowl. Then you go slowly put that other one in this bowl. And you have to mix it 30 seconds in between each stir in. And I'm just like, okay, I have no patience for that. And I think that's probably why. But even when I have followed it to the step of every single thing, it just does not work out for me. So I feel like it just takes a skill. And then there's number 4 type who can do both, which is awesome. Like, those people are awesome. I would love to be one of those people, but that's okay. I'm not. But I do like to attempt to do something that is fun, and let's just try this. I scoured Pinterest. I must have had at least 10 different recipes opened in 10 different tabs on my browser. And let me tell you, I got so discouraged. The ingredients were all pretty much the same. There's just different quantities of the ingredients. The pans were different sizes. The temperature on the oven were different. I mean, we didn't have 10 different temperatures of the oven, but you know what I mean? It's like, it just varied recipe to recipe. The number of minutes, I would say that was anywhere between, one of them said 8 to 10 minutes, one said 10 to 12, one said 22 to 28, one said 17 to 18. I mean, I was just like, okay, can I do this? Like, how am I gonna do this? So then I found one that was using a cake mix, and I thought, well, this could solve all my problems, because using the cake mix, you don't have to whip and fold and make these stiff peaks on egg whites and do this and do that. And I thought, I feel like that's cheating. And I think I even told you guys in a previous Vlogmas video that that's what I was going to do. But I felt like, you know what? If I am really going to challenge myself, we're gonna make this cake from scratch. So then I kind of got rid of that one recipe. And then I just started looking at what size pans I had. So when I realized the size of pan I had, I thought, okay, now let's narrow it down. Then I narrowed it down to like 4 different recipes. Then I just looked at the steps. And also I looked at the comments on the actual recipe blog. And then I just really started looking to see if I recognized any of the recipe blogs, which I did recognize. I'm pretty sure this is the one I ended up going with, but I am not positive. The one I ended up going with, I will have linked down below. So once I finally settled on the cake I wanted to make, then we're on frostings and filling. Well, the frosting and filling that was with this cake that I landed on, I was like, no, it just didn't sing with me. And also, they're a little complicated. So it was like they were using ganache and they were having to whip and whip and whip. And let me tell you, this is how much of a baker I am not. I don't have a big fancy mixer. I have a hand mixer. So we're doing all this with a hand mixer. So that's the other thing. It's like I can't just sit it on a mixer and let it whip and whip and whip and whip for like 10 minutes, which is like, I feel like one of these frosting recipes that said like 8 minutes or something. I was not going to be all about that life at this moment. So I decided to use the frostings because I was really drawn to the frostings on the cake mix Yule Log recipe blog. One of them was a marshmallow frosting, which I knew would go over well with my family. And then she made a buttercream for the outside. And all the other ones use this ganache, which I don't even know what ganache is, but looking at the way to make it, and then plus it kept saying something about, oh, it could separate. You have to be really careful. You have to keep it cool. You make sure your ingredients are this and that. I was like, okay, that's just gonna stress me out way too much more. So I decided to just go with the buttercream. I've made buttercream before, and I figured I'm just gonna go with that. And it was still super easy looking, and I feel like it's a cake is a cake. I'm not trying to do it to make it look beautiful. I just wanna see if I can do a roll-up cake. I feel like the hardest part of this is the cake. So I didn't wanna stress myself out more by having some, like the frosting being another barrier. So I feel like the number one thing is the cake, and then we get the frosting on there. Then there's the decoration and actually making it look like a log. I even plan on that. I could make it easy. This is another thing where I wanted to stretch my, my skills. So a lot of them was just the actual log itself after it's rolled up, and just decorate it, and you just use a fork and you make it look like, now, is that really gonna be that easy? They make it look easy on these blogs, but by just taking a fork and making it look like bark. Or you could elevate it a level and cut it off at a 45-degree angle and push it up to the side, and it actually looks like a log with a little bit of branch sticking out. And then you're supposed to put all these sugared cranberries and sugared rosemary. I was not about to buy if I still had some cranberries left over, then I would have done it, but I wasn't going to buy cranberries and rosemary just as decoration. So I'm just gonna use ornaments or like Christmas decorations, and I've already washed some really, really well, and I let them soak overnight in a container. So that is my plan, is just to use these decorations and just put them on there. So anyway, so here we go. We're gonna have a marshmallow cream frosting, a chocolate butter for filling, and a chocolate buttercream frosting. So those two recipes will be linked down below. And then the cake that I ended up with, I will have that link down below. I'm gonna do a voiceover for this, mainly because I wanna my understanding is you have to kind of work fast with this, especially once it comes out of the oven. So I don't wanna be distracted by describing what's going on. So I'm just gonna set up the camera, let it roll, and then I'm gonna do a voiceover. And one of the things I'll do as I'm talking is I'm gonna go over some tips that some of these websites kind of talked about, how making it successful on the rolling and that kind of thing. Oh, that's the other reason I ended up going with this recipe was because it also seemed like the most simplest with the rolling up. The other ones were like, carefully invert onto a towel. Okay, well I can just see it in my mind. I'm taking this out. You're supposed to do it still warm, and you're supposed to just kind of easily flip it over where it's not gonna fall and crack as it's falling. That would be my luck. So you'll see that this recipe that I chose was the only one that had you roll it up this way. We'll see if it works. There could be a reason why all 9 other recipes I saw had you do it a different way. So we'll just see what happens, but let's go ahead and go into this. And like I said, hopefully you're gonna see a beautiful Yule log, but you know what, this is fun. This is Christmas time. This is the time for me, for our family. It's not real formal, so whatever it looks like, my family's going to eat it. I'm not too worried about that. My husband actually kind of said, well, are you buying ingredients for like 2 of them just in case one of them fails? I'm like, no, my people won't care. If it fails, it fails. It's okay. It's all about the execution and trying to do it and trying to challenge myself, and that is what this is about. And like I said, it's still gonna taste good. I have no doubt about that it's gonna taste good. It just may not look as pretty as the others, but we're gonna try it. So let's go get in the kitchen. We're gonna start with the cake. So for the ingredients, we need 4 eggs, 3/4 cup of sugar. We're using white granulated sugar, 1 teaspoon of vanilla,
1/2 teaspoon of kosher salt, 2/3 of a cup of flour, 1/3 of a cup of sour cream, 1/4 cup of melted butter, 2 tablespoons of milk, 1/2 of a cup of cocoa powder, and 1 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder. Now I'm following this exactly how the recipe says, so the first thing it says to do is to mix your eggs and your sugar and your vanilla and your salt. It says to whip this on high speed for a full 5 minutes. So I even put a timer on my oven so I can make sure I had a full 5 minutes. It said it should get light in color and triple in volume. So right away I thought, this doesn't seem to be doing what it says it's going to be doing, but I'm going to do it. Like I said, I don't have a big fancy mixer. I just have this one little whip stick for my hand mixer. So we're just going to go with it, following the instructions. So it did maybe double in volume, but it definitely didn't triple in volume. The next thing it said to do was to fold in the flour, cocoa, and baking powder. It didn't have you mix these together first, but I went ahead and did it because it just seemed odd to add them to the bowl separately, which maybe I should have. I don't know, but it just said to fold them in there. But I just thought it was weird. I've never made any kind of baking recipe that it didn't have you combine these, like the dry ingredients together before adding them into a bowl. So I went ahead and just kind of combined them a little bit, and then that way at least I could, fold them in there well. And again, I'm not a baker, so as far as I'm concerned, folding is not using a mixer. That's my understanding. So I just took my rubber spatula and I just kind of, mixed it around, which cocoa powder is so hard to work with. I have worked with cocoa powder before when I've attempted to make different goodies, and man, that stuff like floats. Like, what the heck is up with that stuff? It was so hard. I had to really work this. Again, this is where my lack of patience comes into play, I think. So just really work it. It will eventually come together. It's almost like magic. It's weird because it goes from like not working at all to like suddenly you have this like batter, and it just kind of comes out of nowhere. So that part was kind of cool. Next up, it did say to whisk together the sour cream, melted butter, and the milk. Now, I went ahead and already had melted my butter ahead of time because I kind of felt like it shouldn't be super hot going in with the sour cream because I didn't want to curdle it. So I did melt the butter way earlier and let it kind of come to room temperature. And so I did use my whisk on my mixer just because I thought it may be kind of hard to whisk it with just a hand, like whisk. So I did use my mixer whisk, which it seemed to work a lot better. And then it says to fold this into the batter. So you can see here's my batter, and I'm putting in now the sour cream, butter, and milk. Now, this batter just reminded me really strongly of like brownie batter, and I don't even know if I've ever made brownies from scratch. I think I've only like made them from a box. And you know how like the fudgy brownies, like the ones that say fudge brownies on them in the box, how thick that batter is? That's what this reminded me of. Like, it just was a really thick, heavy batter. So I was really like struggling at this point, like having any confidence this was going to work, because I thought, isn't this supposed to be like a sponge cake? That's what it kept kind of talking about, was this was a sponge cake. But I just, I'm like, nope, I'm going to be confident this is going to work. I'm doing everything the way it said I'm supposed to do. So here's my pan. Now, this particular recipe said you need a 15 by 10, I believe is what it says. Again, I will have the recipe linked down below. So I did spray it with cooking spray on the bottom, put parchment paper. This did say to make sure you had some overhanging a little bit because you'll use this when you wrap it up. Put your batter in. I had the hardest time getting this level. Like, it did not want to get level because that batter was so sticky. Now, this is going to go into a 325-degree oven, and it says for 22 to 28 minutes. So I set mine for 22 minutes. And now I'm getting a towel out. So it says use a linen towel. So this is what I have. It's ginormous, which I wish I would have had a smaller one. And now after 24 minutes was mine that started springing back, because I think that's what it said in the recipe, when it like springy in the center. So it was kind of springing back a little bit. It still kind of had indentation, but this was after 24 minutes. So now it says to generously dust with powdered sugar on top of your cake immediately right when it comes out of the oven. So that's what I'm doing. And all the other like tips on all, like I scoured Pinterest, and all the tips said this was the first thing to do. It's like almost every website except for one of them. And it just said to generously put it on there. Then this particular website though has you just leave it in the pan, put the towel on top, and just start rolling. Now, as I was rolling, I started doubting myself, thinking, okay, was I supposed to leave the paper on there? Was I supposed to be just rolling up the cake? Because then I was thinking, did I not? So that's why I kind of stopped, because at this point I stopped. I went and looked at the website again to see, because she had pictures, and yes, she was rolling the parchment paper into the towel. So this is what we have. Now it says now allow it to cool completely. Some of the tips that I can't even see it at this point to even see if it's rolled up okay. So I'm just like, okay, it is what it is. But some of the tips said to go ahead and put it in the refrigerator if you want to speed up the cooling process. And I believe this particular website also said that she had done that. Like, I was reading comments, I was reading everything. And so I went ahead and put it in the refrigerator because I was so anxious to like want to see this happen. So I went ahead and put it in the refrigerator to let it cool completely. Now, the moment of truth, y'all. So we are going to start unrolling this. And I said to do it very slowly, so I'm doing it. Actually, no, at this point, I didn't know to do it slowly. I just started unrolling it. I think it just says slowly unroll. As you can tell, we are in a million pieces. I do not know what happened. It just fell apart. But I was not going to be discouraged, y'all. We are going to make another cake because I am not going to let this get me. And I'm just not going to give up at this point. I almost felt like I was going to just paste this all together, but I thought, know what? We are going to go look at one of the other recipes and we're going to make another one. This recipe has similar ingredients but different execution. So this one we need 3/4 cup of flour, 1/3 cup of cocoa powder, 1 teaspoon of baking powder, 1/2 teaspoon of salt, 4 eggs, but it says to divide them. So I have my egg yolks, and I have my egg whites, which I'm terrible at separating. 3/4 cup of sugar, 5 tablespoons of sour cream, 1/4 cup of butter melted, and a teaspoon of vanilla. So like I said, very similar ingredients, but definitely the execution is different. On this one, it says to whisk together the flour, cocoa powder, and the baking powder and salt and set aside. So again, this is where I was talking about where that other website just said to fold them into the batter. This one actually tells you to whisk them together. So again, not being a baker, maybe those of you who are bakers would have seen that other recipe and maybe found that this was a flaw, or maybe not. I don't know. I don't want to say someone else's recipe is a flaw because her pictures were perfect and it seemed to work for her. But maybe other people knew that this was a better way to do it, to whisk them together because you're getting the ingredients distributed evenly. I don't even know if this matters, but I'm just telling you, this particular recipe said to whisk those ingredients together and then set it aside. The next step is to take your egg yolks and your sugar, and it says to combine these until mixed well or something like that. I can't remember. I have combined eggs and sugar until combined. I don't think that's exactly the wording. So I'm just using my whisk. It didn't say how to mix them. So I'm just using my whisk here. And I'll tell you, this person who has this recipe blog, she actually just made this on her Instagram the other day. So I did watch her Instagram, and she does do all this part by hand. So that's okay. And so we need to also now add in our melted butter, our sour cream, and our vanilla. But it was really nice watching her. What I was doing was I was reading the comments on this recipe blog after I made this, as far as the unrolling part. I just wanted to see, like, are there any tips when it comes to rolling it or unrolling it? So while it was in the oven, I was reading some comments, and she had said, I just made this on Instagram. So I went over and watched the Instagram reel, and she made it look so easy. But if you make these all the time, then I guess they would be easy. So I'm just whisking this all together till it's nice and beautiful. Already this batter looks so much better. Now it says to add the dry ingredients and again to whisk it until combined. Now I'm just folding them in since I thought, well, it looks like every other time you're supposed to just fold these dry ingredients in. So I'm just folding it because I don't think it said, I think it just said add the dry ingredients until well combined and then set aside. So this already is looking pretty good, a little bit airier than the other one. Now it says to add egg whites, whip on high until stiff peaks form. Now, as I said before, this is the part of baking that I have no patience for. But I whisk the heck out of these. I had it on high. I just whipped and whipped and whipped. And I was so afraid, though. I thought I have read before that if you whip them too much, you can actually break them. I think that's what it's called. So I was so nervous that I was going to whip them for too long. So I just really kind of kept stopping and checking to see, are they stiff enough? What are stiff peaks? I know there's like stiff peaks and soft peaks, but I feel like this looks pretty good. So it says to fold in a third of a third of the egg whites into the chocolate mixture to kind of loosen up the chocolate mixture. And then it says to add in the remaining after you kind of loosen it up. So again, I was really afraid to mix too hard because again, I remember just from reading other recipes using egg whites that you have to be kind of careful. So I still feel like I was a little too aggressive with it now watching back this footage. I'm thinking I probably should have been a little bit more careful. I don't know. Again, I was just afraid to break them. Is that the proper terminology, that you can break them? I don't know. I just thought that when I've tried to make meringue and stuff before, that's one of the things that I remember reading is that if you can over whisk them and then they go from stiff peaks to goo in 2 seconds flat or something. But I'm already seeing this mixture look so much different than the other one. Now, this one also used a larger pan. This is like a 17 by something pan, 17 by 12, I want to say. Again, parchment paper, spraying it with cooking spray. I also sprayed the parchment paper on top with cooking spray. Again, had a little trouble getting it smoothed out because this batter just does not want to smooth out to the edges. I'm wondering if it'd be easier with parchment paper sheets where the parchment paper is not sticking up. I may try that sometime. I don't know. So this is going to go into a 350-degree oven for 12 minutes. So you guys, like I said, everything is so different on these recipes with temperature and time. Now, this particular blog did not talk about using powdered sugar, but I'm going to use it because it's on every other one. So I went ahead and just put a little bit of powdered sugar on the bottom and then put this on top. So this came out, it did take 12 minutes exactly. It was nice and springy to my touch. I'm adding powdered sugar on top. Again, she does not, but I'm just going to go with it. So now she doesn't use a towel. She just uses the parchment paper itself to kind of fold it up. Now, she did say to spray the parchment paper generously with cooking spray, so that could be what she's using instead of the powdered sugar. She did say roll it up tightly, but not too tightly. Hers, she rolled up pretty tight and it looked beautiful. But here we go. So at least now I can kind of see the edge. So we can see it here. We can see, it's all rolled up. This time I'm going to leave it on the counter to let it cool. I don't think this particular recipe blog said to put it in the refrigerator to speed up the cooling. It may have, but I just felt like maybe my refrigerator was too cold because I did notice there was some sticky spots on the one that did not turn out. Maybe I undercooked it. I don't know, but this one's staying on the counter. So after 2 hours of sitting on the counter, you guys, this was a late night, I am going to unroll it. Now, I was so nervous. I was more nervous with this one than the other one because the other one failed. And look how slowly I'm unrolling it. Now, at one point, I don't know if you're going to be able to see it, at one point it started sticking a little bit to the parchment paper. So yeah, right there. And so I just stuck my hand over there to unstick it because I think it would have cracked if I would have just kept going. So be careful of that when you're unrolling it. And look, y'all, we have a perfectly unrolled cake. At this point, I was so excited that the cake worked. I was like, okay, this is the worst part is over, right? Then my husband says, but you have to roll it back up. And I was like, oh no, I didn't even think about that. But we're going to be positive, right? We are going to be so positive. So let's go ahead and make some frosting. The first frosting we're going to make is a marshmallow frosting. Again, this was from a different recipe blog. I just thought this sounded really good for my family. I thought they would really like it. So we're using 1 cup of butter, 1 container of marshmallow cream, 2 teaspoons of vanilla extract, and 3 cups of powdered sugar. I will link this original recipe down below as well. Super easy. I just thought marshmallow cream sounded good. Most of them use a mascarpone filling, which I think is a cheese, right? I'm not sure. So this is super easy. We're just going to first mix together the butter, the marshmallow cream, and the extract. And let me tell you, this is my first experience working with marshmallow cream. This stuff is a nightmare. Like, again, why do I bake? I mean, this is so crazy. Like, I had the hardest time getting the marshmallow cream out of the container. It was so insane. I think this was worse than working with honey, to be honest. Like, it was hard to get out. It was sticky on my spatula. It was all over my hands. It was on my nails. It was just a nightmare. Anyway, so it says to mix well until combined, and it says to scrape the sides really well as you're mixing it. And it also said before you add in the powdered sugar to also scrape the sides really well. But this marshmallow stuff was a nightmare. So now we're going to add in our powdered sugar. Now we have 3 cups of powdered sugar. Now I wasn't sure, am I supposed to like do this all at once? Again, I just wasn't sure, so I'm going to just put it all in there at once. Powdered sugar also kind of makes a mess. It kind of floats up all in the air, but again, I like making frosting because this is how easy it is, and so frosting I can do. I can definitely do. So we're just going to mix this up until it's nice and combined. And this frosting tasted really good too, by the way. I did taste it. I didn't think it had very strong marshmallow flavor, but my husband said he thought it did, and he really loves marshmallows. So he thought it had a really good, strong marshmallow flavor, but it wasn't sticky. The batter was nice and, like nice and thick. I did not add any kind of like milk or anything, and I think that it did maybe mention you could add milk to thin it out a little bit, but I didn't need to. And so this will be for the filling, for the inside of the log. Now for the outside, I did a chocolate buttercream. Most of the websites did a chocolate ganache. I don't know what that is, but it just sounded a lot more difficult. I was fine with the buttercream. I've worked with it before. I did a double recipe. This is 1 cup of butter, 6 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and 2 cups of powdered sugar. Now, one thing I did not add that it talked about was adding some salt. I meant to do that, but I forgot to add that in there. And it does say you can use some milk if you want to thin it out a little bit. So this one, again, super easy. You just add in everything. So you're adding in your butter, your cocoa powder, your powdered sugar, and then if you are using salt, you would add in your salt. It says at this point, don't add in the milk until you start mixing it, and you want to add in like a tablespoon at a time for consistency. But again, I didn't find the need for it because I figure I wanted this a little bit thicker for the log because I wanted to kind of get a textured look. And I didn't think you would be able to do that with a thinner, consistency frosting. So I was just trying to go for thick. And I thought, well, after I put it in the refrigerator and let it come together, then we'll see how thick it is and see if I need to add any type of milk, and I did not. Like, it was a perfect consistency for the cake. So here are both the frosting. So we have the chocolate buttercream, and then we have the marshmallow filling. And now time for the cake. I had to really pull myself back, you guys, because I was so excited about the cake working, but then also nervous about rolling it back up. And so I was pretty nervous at this point about the cake. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to put the filling in. And I didn't want to go all the way to the edge because I didn't want it to like squeeze out the sides. Now I just kind of babied it. I just kind of rolled it and babied it. I didn't really feel like I needed to, but because it felt very sturdy, but I just kept rolling and rolling and rolling. At this point, I made my husband come look at it because he made that comment. And then now we need to cut a 45-degree angle, which I had to ask my husband, like, is this right? Does this look right? So we could get that extra little branch looking thing. And then I got so here we go. Here's that. Again, see, I think I put too much filling in it because it started kind of squeezing out. I have this board in my kitchen that I use for displaying stuff. And so I just cleaned it all off and got this. Now, as I was frosting this, it started trying to fall apart in a few places, so I just used the frosting, and then that extra little branch hanging out, it was looking terrible, not completely covered. Now it says just use a fork just to kind of texture it, and I don't know how well this shows up in camera, but you guys, this actually looks really good. And also I should have cleaned off my fork because it started kind of dragging, and so at one point I did stop to clean off my fork, and then came back and started going again. And at first I forgot to put it seam side down, and so I did have to kind of turn it to do it. But yeah, I mean, I feel like it looks really good at this point. Now, I had read, somebody had said to put some powdered sugar to make it look like snow, and so I don't have a sifter. Of course, you guys, you know I don't have a sifter. So I have this little tiny colander thingy, you know, I think these may also called a sifter, so I just use that to kind of sprinkle it on there. And this is just a sprig that I told you guys that I cleaned up and added on top. And you all look at this. I am so completely proud of this. Now, the camera here is kind of jerky because I was actually trying to get some good angled pictures, and you can take pictures while you're filming with my camera. And so I'm just trying to get every angle. I feel like the pictures didn't turn out as good as what it looks like in person because, you guys, this looks really good. Now, I'm making this on a Friday, so what I did was I just covered up the ends with some plastic wrap and put it in the refrigerator. That's what I had read. Somebody had said, if you make it ahead of time, just cover up the cake part with plastic wrap. You don't have to cover up the frosting part, and so that's what I did. So you guys, I am so incredibly happy. Will I make one of these again? Probably not. This was so stressful for me. I don't even know if I'll attempt like a pumpkin roll, which is one of my favorite holiday things. But I will have everything linked down below. I'll have both the cake recipes, both the frosting recipes. And if you guys have ever made one of these, let me know. What did you think that maybe I did wrong with the first cake? What do you think went wrong with the first cake? I'm curious. But let me know if you guys plan on making something like this, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye, guys.